I think we're live, right, Nick?
We are live. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Disaster Council regular meeting, April 15th, and it is now 10:02. And I will call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Julie, if you can please do the roll call. Thank you.
Yes. Good morning. Roll call Chair Sylvia Ballin,
Present.
Vice Chair Mary Mendoza,
Present.
Assistant Director of Emergency Services Matt Baumgardner,
Present.
Coordinator of Emergency Services Lieutenant Erwin Rosenberg,
Present.
Disaster Communications Gene Roski,
Present.
a representative of the Los Angeles Fire Department, absent. A representative of the American Red Cross is absent. A representative of LAUSD is absent. And a representative of the California Emergency Mobile Patrol, Captain. Pardon me, I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
John Ignatic here, CERT representative for LAFD.
Thank you very much.
We have a quorum. Thank you very much. And at this time, the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Lieutenant Rosenberg. Okay, we can all rise for the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Put your right hand over your heart. Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Second.
And you're just gonna have to let us know who made the motion and who made the second. I think Tony Viro, you made the motion, Chief? No.
Matt Baumgartner.
Oh, Ben, I'm sorry, didn't recognize your voice.
Second
Okay.
by Gene Roski.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Chair, before we move on, I actually just wanted to ask to, on the agenda, we actually have a review of hazard mitigation plan as item number 4. However, I don't think we're not ready to present that yet. So we'll just, I wanted to pull item 4 from the agenda. So we just have items 1 through 3 before you approve it, if that's okay with the motion maker and the seconder.
Okay, maker and second, are you fine with that?
Second,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so roll call, please. Julie? Hello?
Yes, roll call Chair Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mayor Mendoza,
Yes.
Assistant Director of Emergency Services Baumgardner,
Yes.
Coordinator of Emergency Services Rosenberg,
Yes.
Disaster Communications Roski,
Yes.
and LAFD, American Red Cross, and LAUSD are absent, and California Emergency Mobile Patrol.
You're on mute.
Captain, you're on mute.
Yeah. John, you're on mute. Maybe he wants to be on mute.
He may be, we can give him an abstain for this one, Julie. Oh,
Okay.
Hi there, I'm sorry. Were you reaching out for me?
Yes, we are doing roll call for approval of agenda.
Oh, approved.
Thank you.
All right. The motion passes and no presentations. Do we have, before we do decorum in order, Julie, do we have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay, we will skip that. And at this time, let me flip this over. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
And again, Chair, just
Yeah.
sorry, right before we approve the consent calendar, staff doesn't have any changes for the meeting minutes. I just did want to note in the minutes at the last meeting, 2 of the disaster council members discussed potentially adding additional members, one from labor and one from the county of Los Angeles. And they requested it be agendized on this meeting. Staff didn't have enough time to research that. And, just going over the emergency operations plan, I think will take a bulk of this meeting. So we will look to bring that back at a future meeting. So you'll see that in the minutes, but I just wanted to make that announcement. We'll bring that back at a future meeting. So with that, you can go forward with the minutes.
Okay, and so where am I at? Did we approve the minute? Where are we at? General? No.
Consent calendar. So
Consent
approval of the minutes. Yeah.
Yes, okay, so the approval of the minutes. Is there a first and a second? Is someone making a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved, Gene Roski.
Okay, is there a second?
Lieutenant Rosenberg, I'll second.
Okay, with that, roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Sylvia Ballin,
Yes,
Vice Chair Mary Mendoza,
yes,
Assistant Director of Emergency Services Baumgardner,
Yes.
Coordinator of Emergency Services Rosenberg,
Yes.
Disaster Communications Roski,
Yes.
LAFD, American Red Cross, and LAUSD are absent. Captain Ignatsky from
Yes.
CERT. Thank you very much.
motion passes. And now we're at administrative reports. I believe we're going to move item 3 to item 2. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, that's correct. We really wanted to focus today on the review of the updated emergency operations plan. Our plan's currently out of date, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to focus on that today. If there is time at the end, we can all give sort of updates on any COVID response items that might be of interest to the group. But I'm actually going to ask Lieutenant Rosenberg to go through a PowerPoint. He's very familiar with our emergency operations plan, and on a high level, just sort of go through and hopefully get through his slides in about 20 minutes or so. And then we can have discussion among the members here. But what we're asking today of this disaster council, and obviously it's great that we have expertise from other agencies, is if there are any things that is ultimately to approve recommending adoption of this plan to City Council. But if there's any feedback and things that you want staff to kind of look at before, or things that you've run across in the past that at your agencies that you thought should be looked at in more detail, we can do that. But ultimately, we're looking for this council to recommend approval to the City Council. So, Lieutenant Rosenberg, if you can share your screen and go through the PowerPoint concisely, that'd be great.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it, sir. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually hopefully get this done in about 10 to 15 as opposed to 20. So that'll leave plenty more time for questions. So you know that the emergency operations plan is really a document that's intended to provide us guidance on how we respond as a city to all types of hazards or emergencies. It's not something that's mandated or required, but as you'll see, it really is essential to getting and obtaining reimbursement both at the state and federal level. We have not had our emergency operation plan updated since about 2011. In order to have you understand how we developed this plan, we really followed the guidance of the Federal Emergency Management FEMA organization, developing it using the draft guidelines that were actually published just late last year that were slightly updated, which is referred to as the Comprehensive Preparedness Guide 101 for fundamental planning of emergency and developing emergency plans. We also had the assistance of Eric Baumgardner. Eric Baumgardner's full-time emergency operations manager for the city of Burbank, and he's also does consulting part-time, and he's considered really a regional expert. And at one time, he also worked for a long time for the city of Los Angeles as an emergency management coordinator. So he has a substantial amount of experience. He gave us a template to work with. And we've been able to recently actually take that template and compare it to, and this plan that we've developed to a step-by-step guide that was developed by FEMA and Cal OES, and also has been used for Area C that many other organizations are developing their templates just now. So a lot of the cities are in the same process of redeveloping their emergency operations plans.
Excuse me, Erwin.
Oh, I'm
What is-
sorry.
What is Area C? I don't know what that is.
So Area C is essentially our local emergency management mutual aid group. And it consists of the cities of Burbank, Glendale, Pasadena, South Pasadena, San Marino, Alhambra, and also the county participates. So those are areas we're able to draw on for both fire and mutual aid assistance as well as law enforcement assistance. So that would be the first area we would go to if we had a need. And so we participate in two different groups. I happen to right now for the third year chair the Disaster Area C Managing Board, Governing Board, which is representatives from fire and law enforcement from those various cities. And we work as a mutual aid coordination group to make sure that resources are available. We're able to get grants to provide support and services. And, one of the things we're able to do is the last few years, we've done things like this Area C template for emergency operations. We did a USB a few years ago that was able to put all the resources on one, electronic small device, USB, so that it'd be available to everybody in the city in the event of an emergency. Plug it in, and we could be essentially anywhere to work as an emergency operations center. So Area C is really our local mutual aid resource. That help, Madam Mayor?
Actually, very good. Thank you. We needed, the vice mayor and I'm sure needed that. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. So this is not mandated, but it is essential to meeting the, criteria that's set forth by the federal government in terms of what a framework should be for a national response in any type of disaster. And as you'll see, that's prevention and protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. And later down the road, when we get to the hazard mitigation plan, that plays a very key part in those areas of protection, mitigation, and response recovery as well as prevention. So in developing this, as I said before, when we look at guiding our planning, what we're really looking at is how do we preserve lives and protect the environment? Those are really our top three: preserve and save lives, protect property, and preserve the environment. The emergency operation plan goes beyond that and giving us an idea and basis for how we control and direct our resources in an emergency, how we provide for protection using those, and what we do in the event that our limited resources as a small city, like we were talking about with Area C, we go beyond that. It also talks about government continuity. And when I talk about government continuity, for example, and we'll share a little bit in the next another screen after this, is if, let's say, for example, an emergency, people can't respond, or unfortunately are not available for whatever reason, who's next in line to take over to run the various emergency resources that are essential to serving the community? And that has to be thought of. And so that's part of the emergency operations plan. And as I said, we have limited resources. So how do we coordinate? What do we do in the event that we need mutual aid for law enforcement? We need mutual aid for fire. We need mutual aid for public works. So all of those are incorporated into this plan, and who has what roles, and it defines it. In fact, there's a very simple matrix within the plan as you look through it that shows you who's got what responsibilities under the plan for different areas. And then, as FEMA always said, and I put this in there, we have to remember all disasters are local. Any disaster starts with us. So the first step in any planning starts with us in our emergency operations plan. Some of the key assumptions that we included in here with regards to, we included the latest data we could with regards to population and geography and some of the hazards and vulnerabilities. We're very fortunate as a city. I'll say that, our hazards and vulnerabilities are somewhat limited. As you move across the country, folks are dealing with tornadoes and hurricanes and a number of others. Ours, we always think of, I'm sure everybody first thing comes to mind is what happens if we have an earthquake. But there are other things like, natural man-made disasters. We have, some of our water facilities around. We can potentially experience flooding. A lot of that is addressed in the hazard mitigation plan, but in a response, we have to be prepared. Our structure throughout the document, it's really defined and based on the NIMS, which I'll talk about in the next slide, but the Standard Emergency Management Systems, this was established in California as a result, primarily, as we all recall what happened with 911, and it's based on experience that fire has had with a former program called this Fire Scope. And so what the Standard Emergency Management Systems does, or the acronym SIMS, is it outlines how we can structure in a flexible way our operations both in the field and in an emergency operations center, so that one, it's flexible and can be expanded or be shrunk as a result of what type of hazard we're dealing with. But it's also mandated within the national framework if we want to get reimbursed both at the state and federal level. So following the SIMS model and structure is critical for our reimbursement. And what I laid out here on the last point on the slide is just how it works. I mean, we start out with the field, and when things start to go and we need more resources in the field, this is something we do every day. We practice this kind of SIMS concept, which is known as Incident Command Systems, or ICS management type of structure. When we need more resources in the field and we have to activate an emergency operations center, we become a local disaster and we start to bring in all the resources to manage, and that's where our support functions. But when it gets beyond us, then we got to go to the operational area, which is LA County and the Office of Emergency Operations Management, the County of Office of Emergency, the LA County EOC. And sometimes it goes beyond that. And then we look to the region, which is divided up. There's a number of counties in Southern California are part of the state sub-region project or program. And then we go to the state, and if it's beyond the state's needs and the governor declares an emergency, then we're going beyond to the federal and to FEMA. And we're looking to FEMA for support. So that's how it works when I say that, all disasters are local. As I mentioned before, the National Management Systems, NIMS structure, that was a basis of Homeland Directive, Presidential Directive number 5. It establishes that in any type of disaster, that there's a certain structure that needs to be followed. That NIMS, the National Management Systems, again, it's very flexible, and SIMS is compatible with it. In fact, SIMS basically mirrors that, and the NIMS structure. It provides us the opportunity in using this type of structure to be as seamless and manageable in all incidents. So it doesn't matter what kind of incident, we can incorporate what resources we need, whether it's a logistical, as defined in our plan, technical and planning, operations, finance, they all have a key role, but not all incidents require all these resources. So it really depends on the type of incident. And again, I'm sure from a council, from the higher perspective in terms of the 30,000 foot, we need to be able to get reimbursed for these things. So it's part of what we've already followed in dealing with COVID. As I said before, the ICS structure, or Incident Command System, really is what is the basis for our local structuring and an emergency management. And the reason that this was developed was so often what happened prior to this structure being developed was people had different languages. They were all talking different ways. And one of the common things that the ICS structure did was, didn't matter what your title was, what your position was, we came up with a common terminology. So if you were in charge of the incident, you were the incident commander. If you're in an operations center and you're running it, then you're the command center operations manager. You're the director of the EOC. So these became common. So no matter where you go, if you're involved in an incident that is following this structure, everybody's using the same type of terminology. They're managing the incidents by on a basis of objectives, which is what we lay out in our plan. And we talk about span of control being that when we look at the way the structure works, it starts out with commanders and sections and units, and we have strike forces when events get very large, a concept that was very well developed by both law enforcement and fire. So we try to make sure that it's manageable. And when I talk about and put on here unity of command, often we'll have incidents that require fire and law enforcement, and we may have multiple agencies at the same site because of the large nature of the event. Well, we have to have coordination. So that's really key. And so that's laid out in the plan, how that works. And I put in here EOC versus ICS because that's laid out in the plan as well. It's important to understand what the role of an EOC is when we're doing an emergency operation versus a field operation. So the field operation really is our fire and our police out there responding to the incident and dealing with what's happening out there, or public works. Let's say we have a major, sewage spill or a major outage. Public works is taking the lead role. That's a field response, but then there may go beyond the resources. So we activate our EOC. EOC becomes a management support role. It's not the emergency operations center role to run the incident. That's the people in the field. That's what the ICS structure is used for. In the management structure in the EOC, then those roles are slightly different. We still have corresponding types of, as you'll see in the plan, corresponding roles: planning, logistics, finance, and operations, but the roles are different in terms of their support. They're receiving information from the field that says, hey, I don't have enough firefighters. I don't have enough public works resources. I don't have enough bulldozers. So they're going to those individual sections, and then it's their responsibility to seek out those resources from local agencies, or if we don't have it, going to that next step. Remember, we went field, local, operational area. Now they're going to the county and making requests for additional resources. And this is all spelled out in our operations plan. That's why it's so important. Key roles are defined within our plan. I lay out here so that you understand that some of the key roles in our plan is the city manager, who is our director of emergency services, and may likely be working with and closely to each of the members of council to keep you informed, because you become the policy group that really drives the decisions that may be made or are made in an emergency. As the emergency management coordinator, it may be my role, in the absence of the director of emergency services, to run the emergency operations center to make sure that we have all of the resources being provided. That's why we say in the plan, it doesn't become your title in terms of role you serve on a day-to-day basis. It really becomes, what's your role in the emergency operation, and what's the expertise that we've developed. And in the last couple of years, thanks to the city manager and to our chief, we've invested a lot of time in really training various members of our city staff in emergency operations at various different levels. So you see the roles of all the departments are defined, and I just laid out some of them that are here, including LAFD. LAFD is our contract services, but they play a critical role in the fact when we have an emergency, and they have to respond, and they may be the lead agency, particularly if it's a fire or an earthquake, and police may take a secondary role. Public works may take a primary role, depending on what the disaster is. As I said before, continuity planning. I gave you examples here when I talked about primary, secondary, and tertiary being the third person role. Example would be that the city manager, if he's not available or something else happens and he's unable to respond, then the deputy city manager takes over in that role. And if he's not available, then the police chief. Same for director of recreation. All of these roles are defined in the plan, saying who's first, second, and third in the event that they're not able to respond. We remember, many of us that were around, some of you are too young to remember, but the Northridge earthquake, it took hours to get from just one end of the valley to the other. And so for folks to try and get in here, given the situation, we may only have folks that are local that would have to be able to step in those roles. Fortunately enough, the city has invested, and this is where Area C came in very handy. We invested in a virtual emergency operations center. So just about any of us can log on and be a part of a virtual emergency operations center from anywhere we are at any time as we're responding. Emergency preparedness, these are some of the key elements of in our plan that are laid out. And how we develop the plan, I think, is very important. One of the things, thanks to our city manager, we sat down as a group for about 4.5 hours, 5 hours, as I recall, recently, and we all went through the plan together, and page by page, item by item, and those changes were collected and then incorporated into one document and then sent back to the city manager, and the document that you have before you incorporates all those changes. Another key component of this plan is that it should be required to be updated every 3 years, but it should be looked at annually. And as any plan changes are made, then they're documented within the plan. There's a spot within the plan to make sure that it's in there. So if anybody picks up the plan or looks at the plan, they can say, oh, this was changed, and here's the date it was changed, and that it was approved. And so that's documented within the plan. The plan includes and incorporates the fact that we need to conduct training. And this is something, just as an example, of some of the trainings we've already done. Your department heads have attended a course that is about 40 hours in length that included at least 2 tabletop expansive exercises where they start out very small and they become very large critical events. And each of them played a role in those exercises. They've participated in independent studies approved by FEMA that allows individuals to serve in their various roles within the Emergency Operations Center, which is very important. A few of us have attained the ability to get credentialed or be able to obtain credentials which allow us to actually run an Emergency Operations Center. So this is something with the leadership of the chief and our city manager we didn't have a few years ago that we've been able to accomplish over the last few years. So we're much better prepared. We have continued to do some tabletop drill exercise, and this year we're planning to do some more extensive drills, but we've participated in the Great Shakeout, VOC, and course exercises. Another thing I'm real excited about is we're able to now participate in the wireless emergency alert system that's developed by FEMA. And this started out with our acquisition under the UWASI grant of the Everbridge system. So in an emergency, we now have an ability to reach everybody in an emergency via their phones and send out a wireless emergency alert, not only through that, but through other electronics, which we didn't have that most of the areas, most of the cities do in our area. And one of the driving reasons for selecting Everbridge is that 5 of the 9 agencies that participate in disaster area C use Everbridge. So let's say we're also tied up or our resources go down, we can rely on another city as part of our emergency operations planning to have them actually send out messages for us. So the response concepts really are, as I said in the beginning, save lives, protect property, and protect the environment. And it's all focused around what we call the 3 C's: command, control, and coordination. How do we make sure that we take command and there's a unified voice? How do we control the situation? And most importantly, with all these different resources across so many different entities, which is likely in a small city like ours, particularly in a major event or medium-sized event, how do we coordinate? And that's laid out very clearly in the plan. Our mutual aid, when it comes to fire, there's the State Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement. We clearly rely on LAFD, and this is where we're very fortunate to have LAFD as our partner in public safety, because it would take a lot for the resources to grow beyond LAFD in our city. They're a class 1 fire agency, and so they bring a lot to the table to help us. But if it gets beyond their control or it's affecting LA City and they need more resources to support us, then they would in fact make a decision to engage the Emergency Management Mutual Aid Agreement and make requests beyond the city of Los Angeles. Same for fire. We rely on Area C, but in the event that Area C was tied up because of all of this, because of all of the resources being focused on a major event, then we would go next step to the operational area. And that would be the sheriff's department, that if they could not assist us, they would make the request through the state for assistance. Public Works, if assistance is required beyond that, as it's spelled out in the operations plan, the emergency operations plan, we would go to and we'd make a resource request, whether it's for personnel, equipment, fuel, whatever it would require, we'd make that request first through the operational area. And this is really important to remember. I know that all of us have, and this is why it's laid out in the plan, we all have great resources and contacts that we can reach out to get the things we need. But what's so important about following the process through the operational area and then the region, the state and federal is if we don't follow those processes, we definitely risk the ability to get reimbursed. FEMA and Cal OES are very, very, very stringent on those these processes being followed. And that's why the SIMS and NIMS processes are laid out. When it comes to mass care and shelter, one of the things, thanks to Julian Venegas and the Recreation and Community Services team, we've been able to do is we've gotten a number of folks trained within our Recreations and Community Services Department to be certified as shelter staff and shelter managers. But we do rely on American Red Cross to provide shelter services. But what's important to remember, and is laid out in the plan as well, even though American Red Cross may run these and provide the resources, ultimately, that responsibility rests with the city of San Fernando, and we're responsible. So in a major event, if Red Cross was not available, we have to be able to run those shelters and provide those resources, which we are able to do. And thanks to the fact that we have made sure that we have the training for at least 8 staff within that department. Getting near the end here, what a part of that plan, of course, is outlines what the proclamation process is. We know that that was recently followed for COVID and also for George Floyd event last year. It must be made within 10 days of the current occurrence. Our director of emergency services has the ability, but must go to the city council within 7 days to have any declaration certified. And then unless the governor, like in COVID, waives that requirement, it has to be renewed every 60 days by the city council. This is critical because if it doesn't happen, then again, reimbursement can be affected. So what's the next steps for our plan beyond approving it? We already have in process place annexes, which should be developed and are a recommendation by FEMA and Cal OES. When I talk about annexes, talking about other documents that guide for various different key components like alert and warning. How do we make our community aware? How do we do communication? How do we do mass care and shelter? In particular, now that we have a need to do things in a non-congregate way. In other words, we've got to maintain social distancing. We have to be aware of the fact that COVID will still continue to be a challenge for us, even beyond as we develop, some sense of herd immunity through vaccination. First to arrive at the OC, we have a document that's almost complete that lays out in about 50, 55 pages. When you get here, anybody that gets the OC, how do you open it up? Who do you contact? Who do you contact beyond the city? How do you verify what the status is in with the city? How do you activate the VOC EOC system? There are like tutoring documents in there and video links. So if you get stuck, how can you go there? And also working with our Public Works Director, Matt Baumgartner, debris management. When we think of disasters, we think of earthquakes, we think about debris, and we have to have a plan. And fortunately enough, the county has a really extensive plan, and we can piggyback on a lot of these. A lot of agencies and others have templates that we've been able to work on. For example, Cal OES provided us one that we were able to use for communications. That's a template recommended and many cities follow. So those are our next steps that we'll have to develop. But the first step is having this plan reviewed. It was made available to others to review, but I think what's really important is all of the departments had a chance to look at it. We sat together as a group, and I think that was really important to share ideas, and it helped to really mold what is a very extensive document, but very flexible. And I hope I got under that 20 minutes. Questions?
Okay, so let's look at everyone. If you could close the PowerPoint.
Here we go.
Okay, very, very good. So I'm going to go first to Gene Rossi. Do you have any questions, sir? And you're on mute.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, and John, help me with your last name. And you're on mute.
Ignatsik, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Lieutenant Irwin, do all the departments have the VOC access from their remote location?
They do. Every one of our city department heads and a number of key staff do, as well as our Area C coordinator. And we can actually also allow all of our Area C partners in, because this was a software that was purchased as a result initially by the Area C for at least a 4-year commitment, and then the cities could reevaluate. And all the cities seem to be moving in that direction. In fact, as I understand, and maybe you can confirm this, I think LA City's already moved towards the VOC platform, which
Yes,
is
sir.
great because you weren't using that.
We're using the VOC also, so good to hear that.
And I understand the County of Los Angeles is looking at that as well. They want to abandon what's a very arduous process through the order system. So I understand they're looking at VOC and may go in that direction as well.
Yeah, and I know all of our, just to add on to what Lieutenant Rosenberg said, all of our department heads we all have Surfaces that it's our main computer we bring home every day for this, and can access VOC from home. So quite frankly, the first couple months of the COVID response, where we weren't necessarily coming into the office, we were all making our updates on VOC, from home, accessing it from our Surfaces. So it's been really useful, especially in a pandemic type response where, you want to have the distance. You don't all want to be in the small, EOC, right next to each other, breathing on each other. So it's been a tool. It's been a good tool for this particular response.
Very good. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just kind of being new to this. How is it that, like, let's say you're saying Nick might be first, right? But if Nick's not available, then it's whoever's second in command or whatever. Then how do you access all this information in an easy format? Is there any way that like you're saying, you can go onto the internet or look things up, but how do you, not necessarily a cheat sheet, but is there an easy method that you can just quickly look at something?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll start on this one. Actually, a cheat sheet is a perfect word for it. So, it actually might be a good idea to give yourself, Vice Mayor, and the Mayor a quick tour of our EOC. It would only take about 3 minutes, but when you walk into our EOC, we do have a whiteboard that has login information and all the computers. We have I think 5 or 6 laptops sit there, and they have login information for each. If you're the logistics section, if you're the planning section, to log into the VOC, and VOC actually there are cheat sheets in there that are procedures. That you can look at the different forms and checklists on what you need to do to open the EOC. The idea, and that's actually, one of the things that you tend to have we have like cheat sheet checklists in the EOC for each section, one for finance, one for planning, so that whoever walks in first, again, it could be a sergeant in the police department, and if they're the first ones there, they're the EOC director, right? Until someone else shows up. So, so there are cheat sheets. That's a big component of it. But Lieutenant Rosenberg, I'm sure you have a lot more you can fill in if related to that.
Yeah, one of the things that we've been in the process of doing, and I issued out one when we had this meeting back, I think it was in November, if I recall, is a USB, and the USB has on it all of the information, rosters for people that can be contacted at all various different departments, council members. It has information on there for the schools. It's been updated. So it has all of the information that would be essential. Say our computer system went down and you needed to activate, you could plug in the USB and you'd be able to operate using the USB. The annex that document that I referenced, the first to arrive, that document lays it all out with also links that you can use. And that was only recently updated. And it was actually one that I followed, I'm sure, John, this is someone who bring a memory for you, but was really nicely created by Mario Rueda, who is former assistant chief of operations over #2 at LAFD and is now the fire chief at South Pasadena and is a member of the Area C board, governing board. You know, he shared that document with myself and all the others, and all of us took that and said, this is great, first arrived. So you basically can open up that, and anybody who's never had any experience can follow that document, and it will help you walk through the process as others are responding. So it provides a number of ways to just kind of, as you say, have cheat sheets on what you need to do to get to that point. So I think those should be very helpful.
Great. Thank you. And how often do you update the contact information on that?
I try to I started in November. I try to update it frequently. And my plan is to have each of the department heads and folks that were issued the USBs essentially just come see me, and we can take and recopy the information, because I maintain the USB on my P drive, so I can just go ahead, because there's a lot of documents on there, and just update it and say, here, give me your USB, and take like 2 minutes to just update what they had and change it out, and they'll have it so they can plug in. So I think if that's done at least, once or twice a year, it doesn't change that often.
And what I'm planning to do is each year during the Great Shakeout, do sort of a mock EOC activation. So right after the shakeout, it's usually about like 9 o'clock. I think it's like on 9 o'clock in the morning or so. And then everyone exits the building and goes through, what our exit strategy is. But when people come back into work, have the department heads, spend another couple hours in the EOC. Exactly what you're saying, Vice Chair, is just updating contact information, people's titles, that type of thing. Just each year, that Great Shakeout presents a good opportunity to do that, and just kind of do a mock, what do you do, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory. So.
Well, that's great. I think that's a good way to have a pattern and not forget about what we need to get done. And thank you for your presentation, Lieutenant Rosenberg. And I am very interested in the little tour of the EOS. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Matt, do you have any questions? Unmute.
Matt's
Sorry.
recovering from his second COVID shot today, so
Okay.
probably got a little COVID.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm a little fuzzy. Yeah. No questions. I did have, first of all, I just want to thank Lieutenant Rosenberg, because he's done an amazing job of getting all of the department heads together and educating us. We're working, he had sent me some good information from LA County regarding to debris management. There's an annex that we have to add to the EOP for public works response and debris management during incidents. And so we're reviewing that. We'll probably likely use a lot of that or follow that as our document, but I think obviously there's ways we can personalize it, but he's been tremendous at just knowing all the resources, and that's been very helpful. I just had one thought, Nick and Lieutenant Rosenberg, in regards to Vice Mayor's question on updating. Maybe a process with HR when we have new assignments of staff or new positions, like or maybe we already do, but automatically notifying Lieutenant Rosenberg if somebody gets put into an interim superintendent role, or we're hiring a new superintendent, department head, somebody that is critical in that process. I don't know if we can create something that HR automatically sends something over to Lieutenant Rosenberg whenever we need to update that contact list. Maybe you can speak to that, Lieutenant Rosenberg, if that's something that already exists, or we could try to do something like that.
I think the departments have been pretty good about getting me their updated phone list and rosters and the updated radio communication list, like, for example, Public Works. So I think that's helpful to get it. It's one of those things where you could actually be changing it almost every day or every week. But I think the critical information's on there. So, but I think that would be helpful. I mean, if I can see that and there's any major changes, it's very helpful to have those lists and rosters. And I know that you're Angie's been really good about sending it over. Elena Gonzalez here at the department's really good about sending it over. So yeah, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Have to comment on it.
particularly in those interim or acting positions, departments who might be acting in that role for a month while somebody's out, that kind of thing. But thank you.
Because it definitely can impact as you say, I mean, it can impact who's tertiary. If someone leaves, such as a supervisor, and someone else steps in, that may become the tertiary or secondary role, and it is important to know.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you very much. I have two questions. In the document, Erwin, do you list what Area C encompasses? I kind of scanned through it, but I didn't read it word for word.
I did, but I think, it's interesting that you bring that up because I participated in a Area C call last week, and that was one of the things that the coordinators brought up about all the EOPs, emergency operations plan, is that perhaps providing a greater role. So, since this is draft, if that's something you'd like to see more clearly defined, I can reach out to John Panino, our area coordinator, and ask him to help to put a clearer definition, and we can incorporate that in perhaps between the field level and the OA level and what their role is. That's an excellent point, Madam Mayor.
Well, I think it is important, especially, we have a turnover of council members every 2 years practically, and we're not familiar with the term Area C. I did hear the term way back, maybe in 2011, and I actually forgot what it meant. So I think it's important. And the other item that I think needs to be highlighted, and you did mention it, is FEMA and the documentation and all that's needed for us to get reimbursed from FEMA. So that needs to be in bold. That needs to be, placed in several areas so that we don't experience what we've experienced in the past. And I don't, one day, maybe in 30 years, you will have moved on to retirement, and you're a wealth of knowledge. So I want to make sure we're covered.
Did you say 30 years, ma'am?
I said 30 years, yes.
Yeah. That would actually put me close to the age that the chief thinks I'm already, so.
Oh, okay. But I think it's just so key and so important because we missed opportunities in the 1971 or 1994 earthquake that we've had to really suffer some great losses in the city that we should not have. And
so to reassure you on that, and I'm sure that the city manager can jump in more, but one of the things that's really great about some of the systems we put in place, including like VOC, is all of that documentation that FEMA requires, the ICS forms that lay out, our time and reimbursement and the planning. That's all incorporated in there, and they're really easily completed by folks as we go along through the process. It's got drop downs where they fill in the box, and then it generates the documents that are necessary. Also, there's been a lot of training in that area. Members of the finance department, members of management staff have all attended a number of not only virtual but in-person trainings, and that's something that there's a FEMA course, the 611 course they call it, the GS 611 or G611 course that has the different areas, and one of them is finance. And so we've been making sure that members of finance have been able to get to that. I know that Diego's participated in a number of FEMA, as I with them, particularly during this whole COVID situation, and I know that Nick has as well. We've participated in a lot of those. So I think the city hopefully learned from 71, but I think we've been very well prepared in this one to make sure we get the documentation correct. And that's also where Area C has been a huge help because they facilitate getting us information on these trainings. The coordinator keeps us well informed and on any changes and bulletins coming from FEMA. And I make sure that gets out to all of the city staff. And I think that's been helpful. Maybe Nick wants to further add to that, ma'am.
okay.
No, you, as always, thoroughly explained it.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate the explanation, and I'm really pleased with the presentation. So at this point, if there aren't any other questions, I'll ask Lieutenant Rosenberg if he'd like to make a motion.
And
Yes.
what the recommended motion would be is the motion would be to incorporate comments from the disaster council. So the comments on the area C and any of the other comments that we had. So incorporate those comments to the disaster council into the EOP, and then recommend that city council approves the EOP. That would be the staff's recommended motion.
So moved.
Is there a second? You weren't going to repeat all that?
I had it down, but I figured why repeat it?
Exactly. Is there a
Second by
second?
Gene
to-
Roski.
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mary Mendoza,
Yes.
Assistant Director of Emergency Services Baumgardner,
Yes.
Coordinator of Emergency Services Rosenberg,
Yes.
Disaster Communications Roski,
Yes.
LAFD, American Red Cross, and LAUSD are still absent, and California Emergency Mobile Patrol, Captain?
John Ignatsik with Community Emergency Response Team representative in LAFD.
Do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion passes. Congratulations, Erwin. And
Thank you,
Nick,
ma'am.
and all the staff that worked on this. Now we're moving on to a COVID update from the city manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll be really, really quick. We don't want to, obviously we've all been dealing with COVID for the last year and a half. And I just really wanted to kind of, just to tie it to the EOP and our communication effort. I think all of our agencies have probably learned a lot over the last year about communications and how to disseminate emergency information to the community. I think a lot of us, especially in our area, realized that the internet is there's a very disparate use of information from the internet. Certain groups definitely use the internet, social media to get their information more than others. And we don't, obviously in COVID and in the vaccination effort, we've seen that certain folks have been left out. So I think what we've learned and what we will be building into our, future emergency operations plans and communications efforts are, obviously the social media, the digital communications, email listservs have been important. But we've realized that the traditional snail mail postcards and quite frankly, door hangers that people go along, we get someone on door hanger and go door to door and hang those on people's doors. Those have been very effective as well in getting out information. Obviously it's harder because you got to format it in a certain size. But those have been very key communication tools that we've used throughout this effort. And then obviously the Alert San Fernando, that system, we got that up. It wasn't up and running on March 16th when we first had this declared this emergency, but we got it up and running, and Julie's on here, and Lieutenant Rosenberg. There was a monumental effort to basically pop that up in about 3 weeks, and they did it, and we use it at least once a week now, either through the text or the voice messages, and we've really been using it as much as possible now to get, without overusing it, but to get our folks, let them know of local vaccination resources. And with that, I think one of the things that we've seen is that city of San Fernando has, for the past 6 months, since the county started keeping the data of the top 25 cities with the most cases per 100,000 residents, city of San Fernando has been top 6 in for the last, or top 5, sorry, for the last 3 months, and we've been on that top 25 list for the entire 6 months that data has been kept. As of 4 days ago, we are no longer on that list, so we're not anywhere on the top 25, which I think is a great accomplishment. I mean, after being on it for so long, and it says a lot about council and their efforts, quite frankly, on the vaccination and really legislative advocacy. And we have a lot of local, in fact, today at Las Palmas Park, we have a vaccination clinic for local folks. So there's been a lot of resources in our local area, and I hope that we continue, our where we're headed, and by the June 15th date that the governor set, we are actually ready to open everything up and have a lot fewer restrictions. So that's all I have from the city. I just wanted to real quick, tie it to the communications in the EOP. I don't know if any of the other disaster council have questions. I do want to really thank LAFD. They're running our site, the vaccination site over at San Fernando Rec Park, and have been extremely accommodating. As soon as city staff were able to get the vaccine, our police officers and then our city staff, they got us right in, and have been very accommodating when testing was a big deal, and we had any issues with any of our staff members. They put us to the front of the line. So really kind of value that partnership with LAFD and other emergency services here. So I wanted to express that appreciation. But other than that, I don't have any other COVID updates for this group unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, go right ahead.
Nick, what is the percentage now of our population that has been vaccinated compared to the state of California or just the county?
So the last the county is about 2 weeks in arrears from a reporting standpoint. So the last reported data that they have is through April 4th. So this as 2 weeks ago. But we've had about, I think, 30, San Fernando, 32.4% of our population or our residents have been vaccinated. I would say that the average is probably about 36 or 37%. So we're still a little below average from a countywide standpoint. But we do have one thing that's since April 4th, we've had a number of vaccination clinic opportunities in San Fernando. I know the San Fernando Rec Park facility by LAFD has had quite a few more appointments available. It's been very busy over the last week or two getting vaccinations out. So I would hope to see that continue to increase. Unfortunately, this Johnson & Johnson, we had a big 1,000-shot clinic scheduled yesterday and April 28th at the swap meet. That would have been 2,000 doses of Johnson & Johnson, but obviously because they got put on pause, they had to cancel yesterday's event and maybe switch to Moderna or Pfizer for the event at the end of April. But that's a little bit of a blow, but I think we're still have a lot of events locally, and I hope that 32%, I really think that's going to increase pretty dramatically over the next 2 reporting periods by the county.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the LA Fire Department for the commitment they've given our residents and being there for us. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, and I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the managers that are online right now, as well as the fire department. You have all done a great job, and Nick particularly. I don't know how he manages to have so many balls up in the air, and you need to stop working 7 days a week, 24/7, Nick. That's all I have to say to you. Stop it.
Done.
But
I will adhere to that command.
You will adhere. Now I'm really worried. But great job by everyone and the fire department. We really love the service you provide our city. Thank you very, very much. And with that, we are at general. Oh, and I want to thank one other person, by the way. Julie Fernandez. She's done a tremendous job. She has stepped up through this, and I don't think anyone has ever taken the time to publicly recognize her good work and efforts. And I recognize her work that comes through on weekends when we have situations that arise that need immediate attention. And I know it's Julie working on it. So I just want to acknowledge her because she's never been acknowledged publicly. And I'm going to take this opportunity and do it. So with that, we are
Mayor
at
Allen.
general. Yes.
One more comment as it may affect the minutes. Community Emergency Control, CEMP, Community Emergency Mobile Patrol. They're the folks who aren't present for this meeting. Captain Ignacek is representing CERT, CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, just so that's reflected properly in the minutes.
Okay, thank you. I think he said he could represent both. Is that correct, John? Captain?
He said fire and CERT, but not CEMP. That's a private
Oh,
organization.
okay, okay,
What was that question, Mayor, Miss Mayor?
okay. What was that question again,
We
Nick?
got it straightened out. We were just, you're representing CERT. We were just making sure that was,
Thank
so
you.
Yeah.
you're good.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, the general commission comments. Does anyone have any general commission comments? I don't see anyone speaking on that issue. So staff communications.
The only staff communication I have is I do want to reiterate in Julie's monumental effort. You know, I talked earlier about the communications, all of that social media and design work and the all of the signage you see around City Hall and all of the you know, any of the door tags and the postcards. All that design work has come through Julie, and she's just done an amazing job. And like you said, you know, it's been Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. You know, she's hopped to it. So we would be in a very different place from a communication aspect without her talent. So I echo that sentiment that you had earlier, Mayor. Other than that, I don't believe there are any. Unless any staff has communications, I think that's all we have for staff communications.
Okay, with that, the meeting is officially adjourned. And before I adjourn, Nick, so when do you think we'll have our next meeting? Do you give us an idea?
It will probably be closer to June. It'll probably be a couple months. So we have these quarterly. So look out June, July, and we'll have we at that point we'll probably have a hazard mitigation plan to review, and so we'll look out for that.
Are we going to keep Erwin busy between now and then?
We'll do our best.
Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all
Thank
for
you, everyone.
participating. Bye-bye.